Education. Ensuring children and young people fulfill their potential. The school day can be challenging for some disabled children. In the UK, 8% of children are disabled, as defined under the Equality Act 2010. Donna told us, "When I was in the juniors at primary school, we had a cloakroom where we hung our coats. Due to being short, I was unable to reach the pegs, so a peg was put lower down for me on the wall. Whilst I was very grateful for this, it meant that my peg stayed in the same place for all the years I was in the juniors. Every year, we would move up a line in the cloakroom. I never did. This meant that I missed out on all the talk that went on in the cloakroom with my classmates. I was always in the line for year 3, even when I was in year 4, 5 and 6. Despite progress, there remains a big disparity in qualifications achieved. 23% of disabled people had a degree or equivalent in 2020, compared with 39.7% of non-disabled people. 38% of disabled people who responded to the UK Disability Survey said that concerns about other people's views have stopped them from pursuing education. Amy told us, "One of the biggest things that the Open University has given me is belief in myself and in my own actions and ability. When they said I wouldn't, I didn't. When I believed I could, I did. I believe I have the ability to obtain a distinction, if not at least a first. I'm going to prove to the world that people with ADHD are not thick or stupid. They are neurodiverse. I want to be a testament to all the people with learning disabilities who have been told you will never amount to anything, and prove to them and society otherwise." More than half disabled children and young people also meet the definition of having special educational needs, SEN. Early years settings, schools and colleges provide additional support to those with SEN to help them reach their full potential and prepare effectively for adulthood. We are committed to improving experiences for children and young people with SEN and disabilities in these settings, as well as supporting disabled students at university. We will go further in the following ways. Improve support for children and young people in England with special educational needs and disabilities, SEND, in the financial year 2021-22, including completing a wide-ranging review to improve outcomes, an extra £730 million high needs revenue funding for children and young people with more complex needs, an extra £300 million to improve existing school provision and accessibility. We will also boost professional development for those supporting children and young people with SEND, and support improvements to the Supported Internships programme, and increase the number of disabled people entering into apprenticeships and ensure that those who start an apprenticeship go on to thrive. Delivering the SEND Review. DFE made radical changes to the SEND system in England in 2014. These changes extended support to everyone aged 25 and under and aimed to improve outcomes by putting the child or young person at the centre of the system. Despite heavy investment and good practice prompted by these reforms, disabled children and young people are not continuously experiencing improved outcomes. DFE launched a major review of the SEND system to examine how further improvements can be made. DFE will consult on improvements to the SEND system through the SEND Review. The SEND Review will focus on improving support and preparing disabled children and young people for fulfilled adulthood. We want to identify needs early and address them as soon as possible. Clarify the roles and responsibilities for all parties involved in the SEND system across education, health and care, and with a clear offer in mainstream education. Provide faster, more streamlined access to education, health and care plans for those who need them. In combination, these measures should improve families' experience of getting support and improve outcomes, as well as making the system more sustainable and resilient. Jonathan, age 14, told us, "My school has always strived to include me in lessons, sending lesson plans ahead of the lesson so they can be made more accessible, setting me a question at the start of the lesson to give me plenty of time to write my answer, and adapting tests so my level of understanding could be assessed without too much repetition. Using a spelling board to say everything I want can be exhausting, but with these changes I feel I can contribute as a valued member of the class. The Welsh Government is introducing a new Additional Learning Needs (ALN) system. Key to the ALN transformation programme is the ALN and Education Tribunal Wales Act. Learner-focused, it makes the system more equitable, simpler and less adversarial, and introduces new statutory individual development plans, IDPs. Phased implementation begins in September 2021 with a £20 million package of funding. The Scottish Government and Convention of Scottish Local Authorities published a Joint Action Plan 2020 in response to an Additional Support and Learning (ASL) independent review. The plan sets out a series of actions addressing review recommendations and enhancing the experiences of children and young people with additional support needs, including disabled children and young people. Progress will be reported in October 2021. Funding for educating those with complex special educational needs and disabilities. High needs funding is incredibly important. It supports those with complex special educational needs and disabilities, SEND, up to the age of 25. It also supports children and young people who receive their education while they're in hospital. DfE is providing an additional £730 million of ongoing revenue funding for children and young people with complex SEND during the financial year 2021 to 22. This means that the total high needs funding allocation will have risen by 24% in 2 years to over £8 billion this year. Investing in school accessibility and capacity. We have invested £365 million over the period 2018 to 2021 to create new school places and improve existing provision for children with SEND. 59 new special free schools for children with complex SEND have been opened and a further 75 are in the pipeline. DfE is investing a further £300 million to create places, improve existing provision in schools, and make accessibility adaptations for children and young people with SEND in the financial year 2021 to 22. Training for all schools and colleges in supporting children and young people with SEND. We want more children and young people with SEND to have their needs met without requiring an education, health and care plan. DfE is providing funding of up to £3.82 million in the 2021 to 22 financial year to offer staff in schools and colleges continuing professional development, specifically in supporting children and young people with SEND. Training more educational psychologists. Educational psychologists play a key role in helping pupils with SEND, advising and supporting schools and colleges, and providing critical input into education, health and care plans. DfE is contributing £9.3 million in the 21 to 22 financial year to fund the training of more educational psychologists, increasing the number of trainee educational psychologists each year to over 200. Additional trainees from this programme will start to join the workforce in autumn 2021. As they spend the second and third years of their training working with children and young people. Involving families of children with SEND in service design. DfE is committed to involving parents and young people in designing SEND policies and services. This helps create a system centred on families' needs, increasing confidence in the services families use. DfE is providing funding of £8.6 million in financial year 21 to 22 to strengthen the participation of parents and young people in the SEND system through ensuring that they have a voice in designing policies and services and have access to high-quality information, advice and support. This includes providing up to £17,500 for each parent carer forum in England, representing an increase of £2,500 compared with the 2020 to 21 financial year. Smoothing transitions to adulthood. We want disabled young people to be supported and have positive experiences as they transition to adulthood. This remains a challenging time for many. A disabled person with a degree is still no more likely to be in work than a non-disabled person whose highest qualifications is at GCSE. Preparing all children and young people with SEND for adulthood is a key part of the SEND system. Those supporting young people with disabilities are expected to be ambitious about the outcomes they can achieve and to focus on ensuring that they're able to live like their peers by supporting them to enter higher education or employment, to be able to live independently, to be part of broader society, and to be as healthy as possible. Young people with SEND can access the following support. Over 1,500 job centre advisors in schools who provide advice on skills, training and vocational routes into work. A school or college careers leader who can help with career plans and engage employers to provide experiences of the workplace. The National Careers Service in England, which provides free, impartial information, advice and guidance on jobs and careers. The National Citizen Service Programme's Inclusion Fund, which gives extra support for specialist staff, equipment and travel. The Disabled Students Allowance, which helps disabled students with the additional costs they may face in higher education because of their disability. This includes costs relating to assistive and accessible technology and software, travel, and the provision of more specialist non-medical help, such as British Sign Language interpretation and specialist study skills support. The Disabled Students Commission, which has a focus on enhancing the employability of disabled students. Progress continues towards eliminating the gap in degree outcomes, achievement of first or 2-to-1s between disabled students and non-disabled students by 2024 to 25. This is a formal key performance measure for the Office for Students, the regulator of higher education in England. Our commitment to improving transition experiences for disabled young people is ongoing and strengthened for financial year 2021 to 22 in the following ways. Supporting pathways to employment. Improving disabled young people's pathways to employment is an integral part of our plans to build back better and build back fairer from the COVID-19 pandemic. We will continue work to ensure that disabled young people can follow high-quality study programs with clear pathways to higher education and employment. We have already outlined our plans to make available a passport for all disabled students, including those receiving Disabled Students Allowance (DSA) when they leave university. Supported internships are a work-based study program where young people spend the majority of their time based at an employer. They help young people aged 16 to 24 with an education, health and care plan to get the skills they need for work so they can get into a job. DfE will improve supported internships in England, including updating guidance, developing a self-assessment quality framework, and helping local authorities to develop local supported employment forums by March 2022. Traineeships are a learning program with work experience that provide a supported transition into an apprenticeship, another job, or further learning. The government has invested in the biggest ever expansion of traineeships, £111 million in the plan for jobs for the 2020 to 21 academic year, and £126 million in the March budget for 21 to 22. Traineeships have a history of supporting young people with a disability. They're aimed at young people aged 16 to 24, or 25 with an educational, health and care plan, who need extra support to develop the knowledge, skills and experience employers are looking for. In 2019 to 2020, 23% of people starting a traineeship declared a learning difficulty or disability. DFE will evaluate the impact of this £237 million investment in traineeships on young people with SEND by July 2022. We will also consider what more we can do to support disabled apprentices. We have made significant progress in increasing the proportion of disabled apprentices following the Maynard Review in 2016 and MENCAP's Access All Areas report in 2019. 12.5% of apprenticeships started in 2020 were started by disabled people. DFE will go further. Not only do we want to increase the number of disabled people entering into apprenticeships, we want to ensure that those who start an apprenticeship go on to thrive. Our ambition is for more disabled people to undertake and achieve an apprenticeship. DFE will work with the Apprenticeship Diversity Champions Network of Employers, the Disabled Apprentices Network, and the disability sector to understand the current barriers people may face in undertaking an apprenticeship, what works, and to co-develop solutions. This will include benefits from flexibilities and support available for those with an education, health and care plan. Findings will be published during National Apprenticeship Week in February 2022. To increase awareness of apprenticeships and accessibility for disabled people, DFE will work with DWP on the Disability Confident Employer Review to take into account the benefits it can provide to apprentices and on processes for referring people, especially those with disabilities, into apprenticeships. DFE will work with the DWP, disabled apprentices, employers, providers and disabled people's organisations and charities as the Access to Work Passport is piloted during 2021, so that apprentices benefit from improvements that are made. Alongside this, DFE will consider links to the accessibility of other lines of funded support for disabled apprentices. DFE will also further strengthen the quality of apprenticeships, focusing in particular on narrowing the achievement gap between those who declare and those who do not declare disability, including through a workforce development programme for apprenticeship providers and support to employers. The department will also consult on what else we can do to strengthen pathways to employment in England. Shopping. Creating more consumer choice and convenience. Too often, disabled people experience limited choice and additional cost when shopping for goods and services, whether browsing the local high street or searching online for a better deal on utilities. Diane told us, "I always ask if restaurants are accessible, but all the time I'm given the wrong advice. It feels like it's obvious to me what it means to be wheelchair accessible, but obviously some people don't even know what it means." Many businesses on UK high streets are inaccessible for disabled consumers. The buildings that disabled respondents to the UK Disability Survey had most frequently been unable to access or had extreme difficulty accessing were shops and shopping centres, 78%, and pubs, bars, restaurants and cafes, 66%. Shopping online can be a similarly frustrating experience. 98% of the million most visited web pages did not meet accessibility standards, and 69% of disabled internet users click away from sites with barriers. Access to essentials was an issue for many disabled people during the COVID-19 pandemic. Disabled people more often indicated coronavirus had affected access to groceries, medication and essentials than non-disabled people, 27% compared with 12%. Jessica told us, "Because we couldn't work out doing an online food shop, we just couldn't get the technology. Our devices that we had at the time were just not conducive for trying to do a food shop on it. And then once you got on, there were no spaces, no delivery slots, so we quickly gave up with that." It is difficult to say whether progress has been made in recent years. International design standards for accessibility have improved the design of some products, for example mobile phones, But disabled consumers have not been surveyed often enough about their retail experiences to evaluate the impact of this on disabled people's day-to-day retail experiences. To champion disabled consumers and help make the UK the most accessible place in the world to live and work with technology, we will make high streets more accessible. Accelerate the delivery of changing places toilets in England. Explore a new assistive technology challenge. Explore how to improve the accessibility of private sector websites, and to appoint more business leaders to promote accessibility in their sectors. We want to do more in the longer term. The Disability Unit recognises the huge potential of action in this area and will prioritise further cross-government work in 2021 to 22. As a first step, we will improve our understanding of disabled people's experiences accessing products and services in the UK. This will include commissioning research and exploring the extra costs some disabled people may face. BEIS and the Cabinet Office will set up an extra costs task force, bringing together disabled people, regulators and businesses to better understand the extra costs faced by disabled people, including how this breaks down for different impairments. The task force will be set up by summer 2022. Unlocking increased mobility and independence for many disabled people, Motability has shown just one way that costs for disabled people can be reduced, through strong industry partnerships and economies of scale. Transforming the accessibility of our towns and high streets. We want our high streets and town centres to be welcoming and accessible for everyone, yet for many disabled people they can be an obstacle course. A UK Disability Survey respondent said, in terms of physical services, shopping for clothes, personally, I find it an absolute nightmare. If I'm using my scooter or wheelchair to mobilise around, or even on crutches, I find that the actual physical space between aisles and between, garment rails are either too high around the shop. There's not enough accessibility to get round at all. Responding to the UK Disability Survey, nearly a third, 31% of disabled people found using public spaces difficult all the time or often. This is not only a social injustice, but a potentially huge loss to high street businesses. One estimate puts the spending power of disabled people and their families at £274 billion. DfT issues guidance for local authorities and other organisations in England, which is also referred to in devolved administrations, on accessible pedestrian and transport infrastructure. We will strengthen our guidance in 2021. DfT will update the Inclusive Mobility Guidance and Use of Tactile Paving Surfaces Guidance in 2021, and Guidance on Designing Streets for People, Manual for Streets, in 2022. As well as strengthening our guidance for existing streetscapes, we will consider how we can encourage new projects that increase high street accessibility. MHCLG will consider how we can support projects that increase high street accessibility for disabled people in the design of any future local growth funding. The Welsh Government has committed to taking forward recommendations to introduce access certificates for public buildings, including shops, food outlets, sports clubs, pubs and offices, as well as public transport services, following the Scores on the Doors petition. Where people shop or go out should not be determined by their disability. A UK Disability Survey respondent told us, I travelled for 5 hours trying to find an accessible toilet that was A. open, B. accessible, not across a gravel car park or up steps. Often, accessible toilets are used as cleaning goods storage cupboards. I believe this practice should be stopped as my husband often has to clear things so I can gain access. Embarrassing and degrading. Changing Places toilets offer larger, supported facilities for disabled people who cannot use standard accessible toilets. A major change to building rules in England means that it is now compulsory to include a Changing Places toilet in certain new public buildings. including shopping centres, supermarkets, cinemas, stadia and arts venues with a capacity of 350 people or more. We expect to add these crucial facilities to more than 150 new buildings a year, meaning thousands of disabled people will have greater access to public places. MHCLG will make £30 million available from summer 2021 to accelerate delivery of changing places toilets in existing buildings in England. We will also further improve provision across the transport network as well as at motorway service stations. TfT will extend its Changing Places programme by making a further £450,000 available for Changing Places toilets to support disabled people using the wider transport network, on top of the £2.2 million already invested at motorway service stations in England. The expanded programme will be delivered in partnership with Muscular Dystrophy UK, co-chairs of the Changing Places Consortium. In a similar bid to accelerate the delivery of Changing Places toilets, devolved administrations have taken this work forward in ways that best meet the needs of their populations. The Scottish Government has consulted and published an amended non-domestic technical handbook, which states where Changing Places toilets should be provided as part of new buildings or new building work. The Welsh Government is considering the outcomes of a public consultation that ran in early 2021 on increasing provision of Changing Places toilets and baby nappy changing facilities in certain types of buildings. The Northern Ireland Executive is planning to make it a requirement to put Changing Places facilities in new buildings of a certain type or size, or where relevant works are being undertaken to buildings. A consultation will launch shortly. Driving innovation in assistive technology. Technology offers a range of potential solutions to many of the everyday challenges that disabled people face. This can be most convenient and accessible when integrated in products designed for all, such as smartphones. Other assistive products are more specialised, such as wheelchairs, hearing aids or screen readers. The impact of products that support everyday tasks is huge. Over 3/4, 78% of disabled people find access to mobile technologies helpful for living independently. We have yet to take full advantage of the potential of technology to increase disabled people's independence. Too often technology is developed without taking account of the needs of disabled consumers, from streaming services and smartphone apps to AI-powered recruitment and interview tools. The importance of involving disabled consumers in the design process is often emphasized. Too often, disabled people lack access to technologies that would benefit them. This happens in many settings, including education, employment, and in daily living. And too often, disabled people may not have the awareness, training, or support to make best use of technology. We are providing significant support for innovation in the development of assistive and accessible technologies, and also to improve access to their use. In 2019-20, UK Research and Innovation (UKRI) invested £58.4 million in research and development related to assistive technology. So far, the Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund has invested £1.4 million in assistive technology projects. We will go further to increase innovation and develop new products that will improve disabled people's everyday lives. BEIS will challenge UKRI and other research stakeholders to use future innovation challenges to accelerate innovation in assistive technologies. We will also explore how we can drive innovation in assistive technology through the new Centre for Assistive and Accessible Technology, outlined in Part 2. Improving the accessibility of private sector websites. Accessible websites enable disabled users and users of assistive technologies, such as screen readers, speech recognition and screen magnification, to access the same information and services that others can. Given the growth of online services, information and social networks, ensuring websites are accessible is a key part of ensuring disabled people can participate fully in society. A 2016 survey found that 71% of disabled customers clicked away from online sites they found difficult to use, at an estimated cost to UK business of £11.75 billion. There has been progress improving accessibility, with the public sector body's website accessibility regulations coming into force in 2018, albeit with some way still to go. The Cabinet Office Central Digital and Data Office audits compliance, while the Equality and Human Rights Commission in Great Britain and Equality Commission for Northern Ireland in Northern Ireland work on enforcement. But there is more we can do to ensure UK private sector websites are more accessible. The Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, DCMS, will build the evidence base about the nature and scale of the inaccessibility of private sector websites and explore how the government can effectively intervene, including possible legislative options. Reporting back by spring 2022. Appointing more business leaders to promote accessibility in their sectors. We recognise the importance of working with the private sector to improve the experience disabled people have as consumers. Change is more likely to be sustainable if it is led from within industry, by leaders who understand it well. The Disability Unit is launching an enhanced and expanded programme of Disability and Access Ambassadors in summer 2021. Appointed by the Minister for Disabled People, Disability and Access Ambassadors use their influence in business to encourage and support changes in access for both disabled consumers and employees. Appointments are voluntary and run for 1 to 3 years. Johnny Timpson told us, having lived experience of disability and of the barriers that disabled consumers can face when seeking to access products and services, I've welcomed the opportunities that my role as Disability and Access Ambassador for the insurance industry has given me. I have worked with disabled people's organisations and consumer groups, professional and trade bodies, charities, government departments and politicians to raise awareness and deliver change. I'm proud to have led the establishment of the groundbreaking Access to Insurance programme, which will change the way the industry works in the UK, especially in relation to signposting, underwriting transparency, inclusive design, Equality Act awareness, and the importance of consulting people with lived experience. The ambassador role includes making the business case for goods and services being accessible to disabled customers, using their networks to share good practice and to highlight potential improvements, encouraging equal employment opportunities for disabled people, helping businesses to improve their communication with disabled customers, raising awareness of disability and accessibility issues, working with other ambassadors to support systematic change across the private sector. Changes initiated by ambassadors, previously known as sector champions, have included the Access to Insurance programme, increased use of the sunflower lanyard across the airports, rail and retail sectors, ensuring that disabled people are involved in rebuilding the countryside and heritage sectors post-COVID-19, and improving rail accessibility, managing the issues around the wearing of masks on public transport during the pandemic. The new Arts Access Card also stemmed from an ambassador proposal. We are increasing the number of ambassadors. This includes recruiting new ambassadors in the following sectors: airports, arts and culture, banking, buses, creative industries, energy, hospitality, housing, insurance, rail, retail, and universities. Posts in other sectors are being considered. Leisure. widening access to arts, culture, sport and the great outdoors. Spending time with family and friends and doing the things we enjoy is a vital part of everyday life. Too many disabled people are missing out. Atanya said, "People tell me that it makes them uncomfortable when I'm not feeling well, so it's hard for them to be around me. I found that very strange. I couldn't be who I was before," and they fell back. 13.9% of disabled people regularly feel lonely, compared with 3.8% of non-disabled people. This has not narrowed since 2013 to 14. Disabled children are over 3 times more likely to often or always feel lonely, compared with non-disabled children. Practical accessibility issues, stigma, and the need to carefully manage energy levels and pain are all barriers to socializing and participation. Of those disabled people who experience difficulty accessing public buildings, at least sometimes, 90% of those who had accessed culture, sport and leisure services had experienced at least some difficulties. Socializing and participation in sports, art, culture and nature boosts health and well-being. We want to level up disparities in participation between disabled and non-disabled people, so everyone can benefit. Luke told us, "I have disabilities as a result of meningitis. Whilst a student at the Orpheus Centre in Godstone, I developed a passion for songwriting and performance. I have sung at Winchester Cathedral, Bagshot Park, Buckingham Palace and the Royal Albert Hall. Working with places like Orpheus and later Freewheelers and Extant make me realise how important the performing arts are in helping disabled people develop confidence. We will widen participation in arts, culture and sport, make the UK the most accessible tourism destination in Europe, improve access to paths, make playgrounds more inclusive. We want to do more to support disabled people to participate. The Disability Unit will prioritise further cross-government action in this area in 2021 to 22. Widening participation in art, culture and sport. We will widen participation in arts and culture. Disability is one of the main barriers people give for not attending art and culture events. There is wide support among disabled people for a national arts access scheme. Arts councils across the UK are working together with the British Film Institute to launch a free UK-wide arts access card by March 2022. This access card will be usable across all arts and cultural venues for seamless, barrier-free booking that is responsive to individual circumstances and needs. A cultural strategy for Scotland sets out an inclusive vision and includes measures to ensure that disabled people can lead a cultural life, formal and informal, of their choosing. A national partnership for culture advises Scottish ministers on delivery of the strategy. Further, Creative Scotland has formed their first Equalities, Diversity and Inclusion Advisory Group and set up a targeted Create Inclusion Fund. We will also widen participation in sport. Disabled people are nearly twice as likely to be physically inactive. Sport England will invest £20 million in the financial year 2021 to 22 through its Tackling Inequalities Fund. This fund has successfully reached and impacted underrepresented groups and includes a specific focus on disabled people. Sport England will also find new ways to address inequalities in physical activity levels between disabled and non-disabled people, in partnership with the Design Council, by March 2022. It will also develop and pilot a new training programme to better enable social workers to promote physical activity to disabled people in 2022. Live sport offers enjoyment for many, including from the shared experience of being there and feeling part of it. Sports venues have a duty to provide an environment that is welcoming and inclusive of everyone, irrespective of disability. We want sport to be at the forefront of equality and expect all sports and all clubs to take the action needed to ensure this. The success of adaptive sport for veterans is an example of how government can help reduce the stubborn differences in physical activity levels between disabled and non-disabled people. The Office for Veterans Affairs will share best practice and insight from the veterans' adaptive sport community with disability organisations and providers of sport and activity by March 2022. Building on the Active Living No Limits Action Plan's 2016 to 2021 success, the Northern Ireland Executive is developing a new 10-year strategy for sport and physical activity. Launching in 2021, emphasis will be on provision for disabled people. The Active Living No Limits Forum, a disability sectoral group overseeing delivery of the plan, will manage the review and extension of the action plan through to 2026. Since 2016, Sports Scotland has invested over £3 million in Scottish Disability Sport, SDS, supporting disability sport at all levels, and supporting athletes on the world stage. In 2019 to 2020, SDS local branches delivered 466 sessions and 245 events, while over 2,000 people engaged in SDS national events across 8 sports. For 2021 to 22, Disability Sports Wales will receive approximately £1 million as a national partner from Sports Wales. Making the UK the most accessible tourism destination in Europe. We are committed to making the UK the most accessible tourism destination in Europe by 2025, as set out in the Tourism Recovery Plan. DCMS will work with Visit Britain and Visit England and other stakeholders in the tourism sector to promote the importance of accessible tourism in the media and to businesses. DCMS will partner with the Inclusive Tourism Action Group and promote the National Accessible Scheme, which rates tourist accommodation based on its suitability for guests with accessibility requirements. DCMS will also hold a series of roundtables, hosted by the Minister for Sport and Tourism, with stakeholders across the tourism industry to better understand the barriers disabled people face as tourists. Improving access to nature. People with a long-term illness or health conditions are around 25% less likely to have enjoyed nature in the past 14 days than others. In our 25-year environment plan, we committed to making sure that there are accessible natural spaces close to where people live and work, and to encourage more people to spend time in them to benefit their health and well-being. The Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, will make the English Coast Path as easy to use as possible for disabled people. All stretches of the England Coast Path will be open or with established works underway by the end of 2021, unless there are ongoing planning or legal issues. DEFRA will create a new North Coast to Coast National Trail from St Bees in Cumbria to Robin Hood's Bay in Yorkshire by 2025, and it will improve access, signage and information on existing national paths and trails. DEFRA leads cross-government delivery of a £5.77 million investment in green social prescribing, supporting people to engage in nature-based interventions to prevent mental ill health and reduce health inequalities. Many disabled people will benefit. More inclusive playgrounds. Play is an important part of growing up. It offers not only enjoyment but supports children's social, emotional, intellectual and physical development. Becky told us, "My youngest son, who has cerebral palsy and epilepsy and is registered blind, loves to play and be swung around as much as any child. But as he's grown older and bigger, we found it hard to find playgrounds that are accessible. This has left our whole family excluded. It has become increasingly more difficult to take my 3 children to our local play parks as my younger son gets extremely upset as he wants to join in and be included. We will often avoid going to parks, which is not fair on him or his brothers. All children deserve and have a right to access play parks. Yet for disabled children, the opportunities to join in play are far fewer. As a result, the opportunities to develop are also reduced. Playgrounds and other play settings can fall short in providing inclusive facilities. We are determined to increase opportunities for disabled children and their families, tackle barriers, and enable the simple enjoyment of play for every child, wherever they live. The Equality Act 2010 makes clear the duty of local authorities and other service providers to advance equality of opportunity for disabled people. For play areas and playgrounds, best practice is set out in British and European standards. MHCLG will publish a new National Model Design Code in the summer 2021, setting out design considerations for local planning authorities. The department will use guidance supporting the code to stress the importance of providing accessible and inclusive play spaces and equipment for all. We will also write to every local authority to ensure awareness of the need for inclusive facilities and to highlight the guidance and good practice standards that support this. Public services, making access as smooth and easy as possible. From visiting the GP surgery to regular visits from paid carers, services such as health, social care and welfare are an important part of everyday life for many disabled people. Too often these services can be difficult to access and fragmented. A UK disability survey respondent said, "The constant having to justify to various people, especially the benefits office, that I'm disabled, and no, it's not going to change within the next 5 years. Why do I need to keep repeating myself? I'm stuck with it." Of those disabled people who had found difficulty accessing public buildings at least sometimes, about 3/4 had experienced at least some difficulties accessing health services, 78%, and social services, 74%. Access to healthcare services appears to have been particularly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. Disabled people more often indicated coronavirus had affected access to healthcare for non-coronavirus-related issues than non-disabled people, 40% compared with 19%. Sean told us, "My GP told me originally, when I said to him about my foot and how I was in pain and everything, he said, 'Well, I don't think they, podiatrists, are working at the moment.' And he just left it like that, nothing. When I spoke to the podiatrist, she said, 'We've been working all the time. We've had to, because of emergencies such as yours.' So how I think they could improve it is all talk to one another and make sure they know the facts before saying to you, 'Oh no, they're not doing anything at the moment.' Accessing services online can also be particularly challenging. Of the 10 most populated English county councils in September 2020, only the Essex County Council website was fully accessible. Many disabled people see these services as vital in supporting them to live independent lives. 44% of those who received formal care said it made them feel more in control or much more in control of their lives. Phil told us, "All my life I received a service from my local social services to help support me as I have learning difficulties. Although they helped me gain a lot of valuable life skills, I never really felt able to achieve my dream of marrying my fiancé. They never took me seriously. In fact, one member of staff said I couldn't get married because I had a learning disability. When I found out that my local council was allowing micro-providers to work with people, I was really interested, as I knew someone that I wanted to work with who I trusted. I decided to opt out of the statutory care from social services and use my care package money, direct payments, to pay for a micro-provider to support me. They helped me to move in with my fiancée Alison, and 2 years later we got married, something I always dreamed of but never thought would happen." We are taking immediate action to improve online access to public services. DHSC and DWP are also taking longer-term steps to address the challenges disabled people experience when accessing support from social care and the welfare system. We will set out proposals to improve disabled people's experience of accessing benefits, continue working with disabled people and disability organisations at every stage of social care reforms to ensure their voices are heard and needs reflected. We will improve the use of disability data and evidence in health and social care. Work to reduce the health inequalities autistic people and people with a learning disability face. Deliver a programme to improve the accessibility of online public services and tackle the accessible technology skills gap. Improving access to disability benefits. DWP's Health and Disability Green Paper, Shaping Future Support, aims to help people to live independently and to help more people to find, stay and progress in work, wherever people are able to do so. The proposals aim to ensure the health and disability benefits system meets the expectations of the people who use them, so people have a better experience and feel confident to engage with the full range of support. 8 in 10 disabled people who had accessed benefits and pension services had experienced at least some difficulties. Jessica said, "Most of our lives are sat waiting. DWP will improve signposting to other support, including health services, simplify forms and improve advocacy, so that disabled people can find their way through the benefit system and access wider support." Since the start of this year, 2021, DWP has been testing advocacy support to assess its effectiveness and establish the best delivery model. DWP will continue to explore ways to improve health assessments and achieve better outcomes. This will include telephone and video assessments, introduced during the pandemic, and providing better support for people with serious health conditions, including people nearing the end of their lives. Estafia told us, "I'm always getting letters through saying I need to reapply for my PIP. It does my head in. It's infuriating how you get a certain amount of money each month, and then it changes, and then it stops, and then it changes." DWP is also exploring options to reduce the frequency of repeat Work Capability Assessment (WCA) and Personal Independence Payment (PIP) assessments to avoid assessments where a change of award is unlikely. Health and adult social care reform. Disabled people across the UK have told us that health and social care services are a vital part of living an independent life. Estafia said, "They have the power to decide what is a necessary and what is a luxury when it comes to my support. I don't have enough hours with my carer to be able to go outside or to see my friends. Going outside and social interaction is viewed as a basic human need for non-disabled people, but not for me." We know that a bold response is required. We are committed to sustainable reform of the adult social care system and will bring forward proposals this year, 2021. We want to build a system of care and support in which unpaid carers are supported and disabled people have choice and control over their lives, over what they do and how they choose to live. We want to support the join-up of health and care services around people, including through the use of technology, and ensure everyone receives the care they need and is treated with dignity and respect. DHSC will work with disabled people and disability organisations at every stage of social care reform to ensure their voices are heard and needs reflected. We are also modernising the Mental Health Act. We want to give people more control over their treatment and make sure they're treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. Alongside these longer-term reform efforts, DHSC will strengthen the data and evidence base to support policies that will transform outcomes for disabled people, including improving our understanding of the needs of disabled people and those with multiple long-term conditions and disability. And we will ensure that health and social care staff understand learning disability and autism to reduce the health inequalities people with these conditions often face. Improving disability data and evidence. The health system does not consistently collect fully comprehensive data on disability. This means we do not currently have an accurate picture of the health and social care support needs of disabled people in the UK. We will work across the UK to improve disability data. We will take action to improve the availability, quality and use of disability data in health and social care. DHSC will establish a new Disability Data Working Group in 2021 to look at health and social care datasets and address priority areas where there are gaps in the data. DHSC and NHSX published a draft data strategy for health and social care in 2021 to drive improvements in data on working-age adults in receipt of care. Alongside this, we will fund additional research to improve the quality of life of people with multiple long-term conditions, some of whom will be disabled. Supporting autistic people and people with a learning disability. Autistic people and people with a learning disability across the UK experience health inequalities. The life expectancy for people with a learning disability is 27 years below average for women and 23 years below average for men. Autistic people die 16 years earlier than non-autistic people on average. NHS England and NHS Improvement confirmed in March 2021 that autistic people without a learning disability will be included for the first time in their programme to learn from the lives and deaths of people with a learning disability and autistic people, LEDER. NHS England and Improvement will expand the LEDER programme to include autistic people by March 2022. This will help improve care, reduce health inequalities and prevent premature mortality by reviewing information about the health and social care support people who have died received. Not all health and social care staff receive learning disability and autism training. The second annual LEDER report, published in December 2017, recommended that mandatory learning disability awareness training should be provided to all staff and be delivered in conjunction with people with learning disabilities and their families. Subject to evaluation, DHSC will make training on autism and learning disability available for all 2.7 million health and adult social care staff. This training would improve the experience of health and social care for people with a learning disability and autistic people. This commitment forms part of the refreshed autism strategy. The autism strategy has been extended from its focus on adults to include children and young people for the first time. This strategy will sit alongside work undertaken in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, where health and social care is largely devolved. The Northern Ireland Executive is developing a fully co-produced autism strategy for implementation in 2021, with an emphasis on enabling independence and informed choice, equal access to services, and a life filled with opportunities to be an active citizen. The Scottish Government continues to champion human rights through the Scottish Strategy for Autism and the Keys to Life policies. In recognition of additional challenges experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic, a Learning Intellectual Disability and Autism Framework for Transition and Transformation has been published to shape public services and attitudes. Following the success of the Welsh Government's Cross-Government Learning Disability Improving Lives programme, work continues to improve how public services in Wales identify and respond to the needs of people with learning disabilities. The key aim is to support individuals to lead healthy and fulfilling lives as independently as possible. Improving the accessibility of online public services. The 2012 Digital by Default strategy has removed many of the barriers experienced by disabled people when accessing government services. However, the shift to digital has presented its own challenges. The accessibility of new services is variable. Making a website or mobile app accessible requires making the content and design clear and simple enough that most people can use it without needing to adapt it. It also means supporting people who need to adapt it, including people who use assistive technologies such as screen readers. The Central Digital and Data Office promotes accessibility across government. This year, the Central Digital and Data Office will continue to run a program to make online public services accessible. The campaign will help the public sector make mobile applications accessible and raise awareness of how people can raise complaints about inaccessible sites. A longer-term challenge is the development of capability to create services that are accessible to everyone. There is a high level of demand for people with these skills from both the public and private sectors, creating a shortage. This has been dubbed the Accessible Technology Skills Gap. As part of a cross-government effort with the Central Digital and Data Office and the Crown Commercial Service, the Home Office will tackle this issue by defining a cross-government accessibility profession. This will formalise the role of accessibility specialists and encourage more public sector organisations to properly resource to deliver accessible services. By building a pipeline of talent for the accessibility profession, by using existing successful and emerging career development programs to tackle the skills shortage, working across government to share learning, and by improving how we buy digital products and services in government and across the public sector as a whole, for example through more formal controls, support and training for commercial teams. We will also explore how we can drive improvements in public services through a Centre for Assistive and Accessible Technology. The Disability Unit will consider new ways to make assistive and accessible technology part of the everyday design of public services. Part 2 of the National Disability Strategy is explained in the next video.